You are not going to believe what just happened in women's tennis. A match nobody expected to become a flashpoint has launched a Filipino teenager into the top 60 of the world rankings. And the way it unfolded has the entire tennis world divided, still arguing days later, and showing absolutely no signs of reaching a consensus anytime soon. Alexandra Eala has jumped to number 54 in the WTA World Rankings. For a player from the Philippines, in a sport that has historically been dominated by players from Europe, the United States, and a handful of other traditional tennis powerhouses, that number is genuinely extraordinary. But the path that got her there, the match, the controversy, the gamesmanship that preceded the triumph, is the story that everyone is actually talking about. So let's break it down completely. First, you need to understand who Alexandra Eala is and what the climb to this moment has actually looked like. She is 19 years old. She is from Manila. And for those who do not follow the WTA Tour closely, the Philippines is not a country with a deep structural tennis tradition. When the conversation turns to tennis nations, you think of Spain, Russia, the United States, France, Australia. The Philippines does not typically appear on that list. Eala has been grinding against that reality her entire career, working her way through junior circuits, navigating injuries, fighting for wild-card entries into tournaments that players from more established tennis nations receive as a matter of course, and essentially building something from scratch in a sport that was not designed with players from her background in mind. For extended periods, she has been caught in the particular purgatory of professional tennis that sits just below the breakthrough threshold, cracking the top 100, dropping back out, climbing again, hovering in a range where the rankings are good enough to keep competing but not yet good enough to attract the consistent attention of major sponsors or guarantee direct entry into the events where careers truly get made. Rankings in professional tennis determine almost everything. Which tournaments you can enter, whether you qualify automatically or have to fight through 3 rounds of qualifying before the main draw even begins, and whether the people with the resources to change your career look at you at all. She has been working toward a breakthrough for her entire professional life. And then came the match against Viktorija Golubic. Golubic is a seasoned Swiss professional. She has been ranked as high as number 35 in the world. She has played every major tournament on the circuit and accumulated the kind of experience that teaches you every dimension of competitive tennis, including the dimensions that live in the gray area between the written rules and the spirit of the game. The match that followed was supposed to be a test of whether Eala could handle a crafty, experienced veteran who would make her work for every single point. It became considerably more complicated than that. From early in the match, something felt off to observers watching closely. Golubic was operating in that specific gray area of professional tennis where behavior is technically legal but the intent behind it sits in a different category entirely. The time violations were the first signal. The WTA rule requires players to serve within 25 seconds between points. It is a rule that chair umpires do not always enforce with strict consistency, but it exists and it has a clear purpose. Golubic was stretching that window to 35 and 40 seconds between points, consistently, and crucially the pattern was clearest in the moments immediately following points she had lost. When Eala was building momentum, when her energy was rising and her rhythm was establishing itself, the clock was being stretched. From a purely technical standpoint, this sits within the boundaries of what the rules permit. From a competitive intent standpoint, the picture is considerably less clean. Then came the medical timeout. Medical timeouts are entirely legitimate when a player is genuinely injured or experiencing a physical issue that requires attention. They are also one of the most frequently debated tactical tools in professional tennis, because the line between genuine medical need and strategic disruption is one that only the player calling the timeout can truly assess, and chair umpires have limited ability to challenge it. Golubic called for a medical timeout at a moment that raised immediate eyebrows among everyone watching, right as Eala was building sustained momentum, winning consecutive points, and appearing ready to break serve. The timeout lasted nearly 6 minutes. Significantly beyond the 90 seconds the regulations allow for a legitimate assessment, and during the extended interruption, Golubic was observed in prolonged discussion with a chair umpire about a line call that had already been reviewed and confirmed. The accumulation of these tactical choices created an atmosphere of disruption and manufactured tension that was clearly designed to interrupt Eala's rhythm at its most productive moment. And there is a documented pattern behind it. This was not the first time Golubic had attracted scrutiny for similar behavior at previous tournaments. Then there was the line-calling situation that became the moment everyone is still talking about. At certain WTA events, electronic line-calling technology, Hawkeye Live, eliminates human error from line decisions entirely. This match used line judges. And when human line judges are present, there is inherent room for the kind of contested calls that can reshape the psychological atmosphere of a match. On one point in particular, Eala hit what appeared to observers, and appeared on replay, to be a clean winner landing on the line. The mark was visible on the clay. The ball had touched the line. Under tennis rules, which are unambiguous on this point, contact with any part of the line means the ball is in. The call went against her anyway. The appeal produced no reversal. Eala stood at the baseline for a moment, visibly processing the injustice of what had just happened. The frustration, the confusion, the specific kind of dispiriting anger that comes from feeling that the facts of what occurred are not being honored. That kind of moment has broken players far more experienced than a 19-year-old making her way in the sport. You begin to feel not merely that you are competing against your opponent, but against the entire system surrounding the match. That feeling, once it takes root, can drain the competitive energy from even the most determined player. Alexandra Eala did not break. She dug deeper instead. She kept fighting, kept constructing points, kept forcing Golubic to earn everything. The match extended to 3 sets. There were moments where experience and accumulated gamesmanship appeared ready to tilt the outcome in Golubic's favor. Moments where a player drawing on years of tour knowledge was using every available advantage to outlast a teenager who had every reason to mentally check out. Eala would not check out. In the final set, something shifted. Whether Golubic's energy reserves finally depleted from the sustained effort of maintaining that level of tactical intensity, or whether Eala simply reached a competitive state where nothing mattered except the next point, the balance of the match changed. Eala started dictating, hitting winners from positions she had not been able to create earlier, moving Golubic around the court with a kind of assertive, offensive intent that had been suppressed by the disruptions earlier in the match but was now fully unleashed. She arrived at 5-4 in the third set, serving for the match. The final game was everything a defining career moment should be. An ace down the middle to open. 15-love. A forehand winner struck from inside the baseline. 30-love. Then Golubic clawed back with a drop shot and a perfectly placed lob. 30. The stadium tightened. This was the moment, the one that separates players who eventually become what they believe they can be from those who fall just short. Eala served wide. Golubic barely made contact. The return floated long. Match point converted. Match won. The fallout was immediate and loud and showed no signs of quieting. Those who believed Golubic had crossed a line argued that her tactics, the time manipulation, the suspicious medical timeout, the prolonged arguments over settled calls, represented a deliberate attempt to win through disruption rather than tennis. Those who defended her argued that she was simply using every legal advantage the rules permit, and that experienced players have always operated within the full scope of what the regulations allow. Both positions have genuine merit. And both miss the larger point. What Alexandra Eala demonstrated in that match was not simply that she is technically capable of competing at this level. That was already apparent to anyone watching closely. What she demonstrated was that she possesses the specific kind of mental fortitude, the refusal to fold under accumulated pressure, manufactured or otherwise, that separates players who make the tour from players who define an era within it. She won despite the questionable calls. She won despite the tactical disruptions. She won despite carrying the weight of national expectation on the shoulders of a 19-year-old from a country that was not supposed to produce players like her. The ranking jump to number 54 in the world carries consequences that extend well beyond the number itself. At this ranking, Eala qualifies for direct entry into Grand Slams. She will no longer have to fight through qualifying rounds before the main draw begins. She will be on the big courts in the prime-time matches, playing on the stages where careers are built and where the sport's narrative is written. For a player from the Philippines navigating a sport that has historically been structured around entirely different geographies and entirely different pools of institutional support, that access represents a transformation in what is possible. She is now the highest-ranked Filipino player in the history of professional tennis, male or female. The weight of that distinction is real, and she carries it with a composure that is extraordinary for her age. In Manila right now, there are children picking up tennis rackets for the first time because they watched what she did in that match. Because they saw that the door the sport had kept mostly closed to players from their background was not locked, that it could be forced open through talent and will, and an absolute refusal to accept that the obstacles placed in your path are the final word on what you are capable of achieving. That is what Alexandra Eala is building, point by point and match by match. And the tennis world is only beginning to understand the full scale of what is coming.